This class from Agri Challenge Academy is soil organic colloids. Now I will say in detail what is organic colloids, and previous sessions, I mean in a very last classes we have discussed about the inorganic colloids, that means silicates, 1:2 layer silicates, etc. So for any information regarding soil inorganic colloids, you can go and refer with that area. But today's class we are going to deal about the soil organic colloids. Very first, students, in it is organic compounds. Before going to the organic carbon, we have to learn what is organic organic compound. So we have to learn about some basic fundamental approach of the organic compound, students. So overall, students, organic compound, organic compounds are nothing but these are non-living organic compounds formed by the chemical and biological decay, decay of mainly by the plant material only. So mostly in agriculture or in our soils, mostly we will see only plant material decomposed organic compounds only we will see. Some extent we can see some animal decomposed wastage also. And mostly these organic compounds can be divided into two types. What are those? So materials in which anatomy, that anatomical structure of the plant is still visible. This is one kind of organic compound we can say. And another one is called completely decomposed material, which is plays a major role in our soil physical and chemical properties. So completely decomposed material. So very first student, the first root significance in soil physics, yes, physics, like protection of soil from it, maybe all our leaf mulches, it will as usual bulk decreasing of bulk density affecting the soil structure. Even sometimes it will protect the evapotranspiration by mulching, etc. All will come under this one. And the organic compounds present in detectable amount in the soils, mostly students, uh, mostly we can mostly organic compounds. So the so-called organic compounds present in a detectable amount, what are those in soil? What are those different organic compounds? Very first is carbohydrates. We will see in details about carbohydrates, amino acids and proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. Students, I just mentioned nucleic acids, but regarding with nucleic acids, there is no any proper evidence what is happening with what is the role of nucleic acids in the particular our soil property. So I'm not touching just because I've gone through most of the references, which is not that much efficacy. There is no that much use for examination point of view. But I'm mentioning here it's the nucleic acids and coming to the lignins. Lignin also is very, because decomposition of this lignin compounds are very difficult because of highly complex structures. And coming to the humic compounds, in humic compounds, we have discussed about this humic compound separately in one video about soil organic matter. There is a separate video on soil organic compounds. We have discussed about that humic compounds. So before going to start this compounds, that humus particles, what is the humus particles? So how much fractions are there in humus? Can anyone answer?
See,
Yes, someone please answer.
in humic acid, you said in humic acid, fulvic acid, humic acid, and lumen. Three fraction are found.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that those are the fractions. Those are the fractions in our humus compounds. In examination point of view, students, being a competitive examination point of view, we will see only those such particular compounds, those particular fractions only will be. And what the humic compounds are not exactly the constant of the plant tissue, students. They are not exactly, because it's completely decomposed, but they have been synthesized in soil from lignin. The synthesized means they're derived from this lignin and amino acids and carbohydrates and amino acids and carbohydrates by the process called humification. So these humic compounds are completely derived from these preceding compounds, like all this lignin, nucleic acids, amino acid, carbohydrates. So from these above five, the sixth one, this humic compound was derived by the process called humification. So by the help of humification only we can see the production of our presence of human is decomposed. So very first, students, soil humus. So naturally, if we are dealing with any organic compounds, what should we are thinking? We have to think about what is soil humus. So the term soil humus is a mixture of organic compounds produced by the decomposition of plant tissues. So soil humus is a general definition. So humus means in all of sudden what we see, it is a organic, it's a mixture of organic compounds what we have seen in the previous slides, a mixture of organic compounds produced by the decomposition of plant tissues. So, and many scientists have given in that very famous one, Stevenson in 1994, what he said that as the total organic fraction in the soil, exclusive of no decomposer, exclusive of without means without decomposition of plant and animal material, there are partly decomposed products in the soil biomass. He given this type of some sort of definition. This Stevenson as a total organic fraction in the soil, exclusive of no decomposer, that is not which has not decomposed plant and animal material, their partial decomposed products and the soil biomass is called as humus. He given this type of definition. And humic compounds. What are the humic compounds? Just now, one of our students have said what are the humic compounds? That is humic acid, pelvic acid, and humin. There is another third compound also humin is there. Make a bulk of humus through though the lignin can also be substantial in amount. However, Stevenson believes that carbohydrates are the second most abundant compound in the humus. But students, Stevenson is another person who believes that carbohydrates are the second most abundant compound in the humus. He said. So the carbohydrates concentration has been estimated around there will be around 5 to 25% in humus. So overall, students, overall the studies all from Stevenson here, what he said around 5 to 25% there is a humus, soil humus was present given by the famous scientists in that. Now we will see what are the soil rich in non-decomposed litter may contain. So because we have said there are two types of decomposed matters are the which is anatomy is still visible. Very first, what are those called non-decomposed litter may contain some amount of simple sugars. We can see some sort of simple, yeah, definitely there is no doubt in that there is some simple sugars, but high amount of cellulose will be there. It is a high amount of cellulose, which is the main form of the carbohydrates in higher plants. So cellulose contains more amount of cellulose. So next to the carbohydrates. So next to the carbohydrates are the lipids, which is around the 2 to 6% of the soil humus. So students, so before going to I'm continuing the lecture. I'm going to ask another question. Does we can keep on using the can we apply this undecomposed cellulose in the soil? Is it beneficial? Is it useful for us? Is it useful? What is your answer? Say whether it is useful, yes or no. Can anyone answer? I repeat my question. If the cellulose was very high in the soil, that means the addition of this undecomposed simple sugar, high in the soil means what are the characters we can expect? I mean, what kind of reactions we can expect in the soil? Can anyone answer? Please, can anyone answer?
Sir, cellulose, sir, um, it's a form of organic matter, we can say, and when it's decomposed, then it's called humus. I'm sorry, I think.
Please continue. You're saying something. Please continue. You're saying something. It's nothing but students. Cellulose is high. It is not decomposed. So if we add once this cellulose was added, it contains high CN ratio. The cellulose is contain high CN ratio. That's why we should not add paper or any wood sawdust. If we add all these things to the soil, means what will happen due to this wide range of CN ratio, it is very difficult for the native microbes to decompose that particular high CN ratio content organic matter. So what will happen? It will use up to decompose this particular cellulose. They will use the native, that means the already presented nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and other micronutrients will be used up by these microbes. And what will happen? There will be a partial fixation of nutrients will be there. So generally, the plants or crop will face some nutrient deficiency symptoms if we use this high level of cellulose containing material. So things should be like this, students. The questions will be in applied mode, so think like this. Okay, students. Okay, without any delay, I'm continuing my class. The distribution of free amino acids, though it's very important soil organic compounds. Remember, students, amino acids very important role in our soil. I will say why it is important. We will discuss about amino acids in one different slide in different mode. Very important for soil organic constant of the humus, and is very difficult to determine due to the analytical problems. So extracting these amino acids is very difficult. There is a lot of problems here because there is a during hydrolysis there is a because it's highly enzymatic reactive. So there is a conversion. Sometimes there is a loss, or sometimes there will be some some practical or analytical problems will be there. So the amount of free amino acids in the soil estimated around 2 milligrams per kg of the soil, but maybe seven folds higher in the soil rhizome. So if you take in any soil content, maximum there will be 2 milligrams of amino acids. But if you collect the sample near zone of the soil rhizosphere, generally there will be a more, there is seven times more, some I mean 14 milligrams will be there, so around 7 times more content of free amino acids will be there. So the term free amino acids refers to the amino acids in the soil that are not linked together into peptide and other compound. There is no any linkage to it. There are free amino acids mean there is no any other linkage to or any other compound. There is no linkage in peptides or any other compound. So amino acids in the soils can also be present in the cell wall of the microorganisms because it's a component of protein, an essential structure constant for the humic and pelvic acid. Remember this point, student. Each and every line has its own meaning, student. That's why I'm going very slowly. Please make a note about this. So so amino acids in the soil can also present in the cell wall of microorganisms, an essential structure constant of the humic and pelvic acid. And I mean these amino acids as a plays a major role, like it behaves like sometimes anion, sometimes behave like an anion, sometimes it will behave like a cation. So like that, it will affect the some chemical and physical properties. So before that, we are jumping to a compound. We are continuing with as called carbohydrates. So we will discuss about the carbohydrates. What are the carbohydrates? So by scientific definition, carbohydrates are polyhydroxyaldehydes, and ketones are the substance that yield one of these compounds. So if you have read in biochemistry in your MSc, we know what is this. By definition, carbohydrates are polyhydroxyaldehydes and ketones. These are all functional groups. So based on functional groups only, these hydroxyaldehydes are keto groups. There is a many different conditions are there. The substance that yield one of these compounds on hydrolysis are called as carbohydrates. So once we go for either it should be polyhydroxyaldehydes or keto groups. So glucose and fructose are the examples of aldose and ketose. You know what is aldose, which is what is aldose means the keto is all functional groups. Based on functional groups only, presence of that keto groups or some that carboxylic group where it is present, in which chain which carbon atom is present, this glucose and fructose will be defined. So glucose and fructose are examples of aldose and ketose respectively. So glucose is example for the aldose, fructose is example for the for the ketose. And remember students, see the formula, both are same, looks very same. Do you have any idea why the formula is same like this? And how can you identify if I write like this C6H12O6, here also C6H12O6? Do you know why? Can any idea? Is there how we have to distinguish these two? Any idea? Say yes or no. If you don't know means no. Yes means yes. Okay. Just please say. Answer please.
No, sir.
Okay, no problem. Now we will see that. We will see that. We will see in coming. Just next slide only. We will get the clarity in that. So glucose and fructose are the examples of aldose and ketose. Okay, now it is clear. So you know what is example for that. So aldose group. So now we will see about glucose. Aldose group is a characterized by terminal carboxyl group will be there in COH. Actually, you should know all these things. This is the carboxylin group. So one oxygen is double bonded, one carbon is double bonded oxygen. Is called the terminal carboxyl group. So in terminal chain, students, there is a compound, there is a long chain structure will be there. In terminal, there will be a C double bond O group will be, that is called the carbonyl group. So this carbonyl group it will be at the terminal of the this glucose structure. Whereas in keto group has a carbonyl group in the carbon chain. The foregoing structure is called open chain structure. So actually there are two types of, in organic chemistry you may learn, if you remember your plus two or intermediate courses, we have read about the two types of organic compound like aliphatic and aromatic. That is long chain, open chain structure, and closed chain structures. So those are called the aliphatic and aromatic structures respectively. So that's a long subject, we will discuss some other time, but today, for today class purpose, just remember these groups. So carbonyl group, so aldose group is characterized by the terminal carboxyl group, that is called in terminal. At the end chain, you will find this COH, where in glucose. Whereas in keto groups, we can see in the foregoing structures, I mean this carbonyl group will be on the open in the second chain below, not in the terminal side. It will be somewhere in the second carbon or third carbon. It will be, I think it will be in second carbon. I think it will be second. I will show in figure what is that. Just show that. Just. And now it is called. See students. See the carbonyl group. It is in a terminal. It will be somewhere in the terminal. It's called the aldose sugar. But now you will see where it is present. It is in the carbon. In second carbon, it is present in fructose. So this makes the difference. See, but the formula is same students. Both are 6 C6 H12. Yeah, I think yeah, C6 H12 O6 H12 O6. Here also C6. There are six carbons. One, two, three, four, five. Yeah, six carbons is there, and 12 hydrogens is there, and six oxygens is there. So we should have the meanings. The formula is same, but the structure is same. This is called the open chain compounds. It's called this open chain. So this is the difference between the glucose and fructose. So glucose example for the aldose sugar, and fructose is for the keto sugar. As I said, students, this is the open chain compound, but closed chain compounds also is there. So originally all sugars were considered as open chain compounds. Yeah, originally we usually in our biochemistry we read about the open chain compounds only. But however, explaining the mutarotations, if you go for rota, that is detected by the polarized light by the sugars in solutions, is the ring compounds, as I said, aliphatic and aromatic. So ring compounds, cyclic structures are proposed by the Tollens in 1883. This person has proposed some cyclic compounds must be presented in this sugar compound. This person actually, previously we considered it is only all the sugars are open chain, but later this person came and he proposed some closed ring chains, ring structures have been proposed. It is known as the aqueous sugar solution. The two forms of structure present an equilibrium existence between the form of cyclic and open chain structure. So that is previously we seen about the open chain, but now it is a cyclic compound. See the difference only here. It is present in here in carbonyl group. It is present in glucose, but here it is present in here. This is all about the organic chemistry. Further, we will read in detail about in organic. We will maybe coming classes. I will deal about the organic chemistry. There we can deal about what is this. But for today, you just remember this is a closure. This is a cyclic compound. This is a glucose structure. This is a fructose structure. Now we have to see what is the role, sir. So again, if you go in depth about these carbohydrates, we can see three types of them. What are those? Monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, and polysaccharides. Well, before I think these are all very silly issues. So what is monosaccharides? Any idea? Can anyone? Can both of you can answer what is monosaccharides? Please give your idea. Please give your opinion on monosaccharides.
Only single molecule, single simple sugar, sir.
Yeah, so you are saying not single. You just came to near to my answer. It's the simple sugars. It's nothing but why it will have very simple structure and simple sugars will be there. So cannot be hydrolyzed into small molecules because this is itself is a monosaccharides under reasonable mild conditions. According to the number of carbon atoms, monosaccharides may be triose, tetrose, and so on occur as octose and nanos. You know what is this? Meth, eth, probute, penthex, heptan, duct, octan. You should know all these things. So single carbon is that means meth, double meth. If you have a two carbon, it's called eth. Three carbon is meth, eth, prop. So this is all organic chemistry. You should have some fundamental knowledge on that. So oligosaccharides are the compound sugars that upon hydrolysis yield up to 2 to 6 molecules of simple sugar. That means monosaccharides. If we go for hydrolysis, it will give some 2 to 6 molecules of monosaccharide. That's the meaning. It will give 2 to 6 simple compound, simple sugar molecules. It will give simple sugars. Discharged, for example, hydrolyzes into two monosaccharides. Upon hydrolyzing of pentosaccharides, yield up to 5 monosaccharides. So if a disaccharide, if a disaccharide was went for hydrolysis, meant yield up to the two monosaccharides upon Upon hydrolysis of pentosaccharides, we go pentosaccharides, which will give up to the 5 monosaccharides. So meth, eth, prop, but, pent. Pent means how much? Any idea what is the meaning of pent?
I
Pent, five monosaccharides. Okay. Disaccharides. So this everyone knows disaccharides sum to monosaccharides. That is nothing but, students, if you go on hydrolyzing these oligosaccharides, we will get the monosaccharides. So polysaccharides, many. So polysaccharides are a group of compounds that yield many different monosaccharides upon hydrolysis. They are also known today under the complex carbohydrates. These are not very complex hydrol. For polysaccharides is nothing but will give many conditions. In oligosaccharides, up to you can see that 2 or 5, 10, 10 up to 5, we can see some monosaccharides. But in polysaccharides, we can see many different compounds on hydrolysis, which will give lot of many complex carbohydrates are present. Example for the polysaccharides is hemicellulose and cellulose are the polysaccharides. That's why very difficult to this is very difficult for the microbes to decompose in the soils. That's why lot of fixation will be there. There is amp for it will generate the wide range of soil CN ratio. That's why we always prefer decomposed organic matter in the soil only instead of that fresh organic compounds. Now let's continuing our discussion. Some of the monosaccharides are bound together by the glucosidyl bond to form a polysaccharides. Example are glucose, xylose, arbinose. So some monosaccharides may form some glucosidyl bonding, and it will form as a glucose, xylose, and arbinose. So polysaccharides, again these polysaccharides are again have been divided into homo and heteropolysaccharides. So homo and heteropolysaccharides. So homopolysaccharides are composed of repeating monosaccharides. There is a that chain compound that is structure. If you see homopolysaccharides, you can see that we are repeating monosaccharide. The same structure will be repeated in the chain. Whereas heteropolysaccharides upon 2 or more different monosaccharides. So for example, for your understanding, students, actually, if I go very in depth about this one, we will completely deviated from our aim of today's class. So for example, say there is some in homopolysaccharides, there is a repetition of same. Say for example, this is one type of polysaccharide, homopolysaccharide. Again, the same structure will be, say A again it will be. But here in heteropolysaccharides, you can see some polysaccharide is around A. Again, there will be some B. Again, there will be some C. There is some change, different types of polysaccharides. This is don't take it as a scientific way, just for understanding. I'm saying we will discuss something there, something different in organic chemistry class. So the monosaccharide molecules can be bonded in a straight chains, or they can be branch like structures. Either we can see some straight chains we can see, or sometimes we can see a branch like structures also we can say. Upon hydrolysis, an acidic medium usually employed to release the monosaccharides. So if you want to release any monosaccharides, we have to use it only acidic medium hydrolysis. The sugars released are identified either by the gas chromatography and paper chromatography. So upon hydrolysis in acid media, we can release monosaccharides in laboratory. If you want to divide, if you want to separate all these things, or we want to identify these sugars, we have to employ one technique called gas chromatography and paper chromatography. So I hope you may not see the gas chromatography, but everyone have seen the paper chromatography. It's a very simple technique. So again, I'm going to come in next slide. So properties of the carbohydrates and the accumulation in salts. So this is very important. This is a very important part in our particular today's subject. So the properties of carbohydrates can change significantly with increasing the molecular complexity. Yes. If there is a very large complexity is there, generally we can say there is the properties of carbohydrates significantly increase the molecule. The simple sugars are readily soluble in water. Remember, students, note this point. Simple sugars readily soluble in water. But the oligosaccharides are the crystalline compounds readily soluble in water, are usually sweet in taste. So oligosaccharides are very sweet in taste. So before going to, I'm continuing class. Another question, students. Which sugar is very sweet, sucrose or fructose? Which sugar is very sweet, sucrose or fructose?
sucrose.
Okay, one student said sucrose. Ragini, can you say what is your opinion? Sucrose or
Sucrose,
fructose?
sir. Sucrose.
Sucrose. Because daily we are eating, both of us said the
Sucrose.
not sucrose, it's a fructose. Fructose is, it will be very sweet. It is very sweet. Sucrose, I know, because daily we are eating sucrose, not sucrose. Fructose is highly sweet content. Fructose will be very sweet. Why? We will discuss in organic chemistry class. But today's class, anyhow, let's continue in the class. Polysaccharides are frequently tasteless. Remember, students, polysaccharides are tasteless, insoluble in water. But here in simple sugars and oligosaccharides are sweets, and simple sugars are soluble in water. But polysaccharides not like that, insoluble in water and tasteless and amorphous. There is no proper structure for them. So they have a high molecular weights. They have high molecular. There will be high molecular weights will be there. The cellulose, the most important constant in the plant residue, is insoluble in water. The cellulose, the most important constant in the plant residue, is insoluble in water. It is frequently associated with hemicellulose and lignin. See, lignin is highly complex and very difficult to decompose. This lignin is a semi-crystalline in nature and has a molecular weight up to the 2 lakhs or 200,000. 2 lakhs, we Indians usually read as 2 lakhs, and 2 millions, up to 2 millions will be there. So generally in hemicellulose and lignin components, the molecular weight will be very high, and it's very insoluble conditions. So just remember what is the conditions, what so it is these polysaccharides are not insoluble and tasteless. But if you go here in oligosaccharides, it is highly soluble and usually sweet in taste. But continuing that, plant starches and animal glycogens are other important compounds of the polysaccharides. So plant starches and animal glycogens are other important polysaccharides. In water, they exhibit imbibition. Yeah, this is a property, students. So the presence of starch and animal glucose, they will imbibe the water. They exhibit the imbibition and become dispersed, but they are not strictly soluble. But these particles are not strictly soluble, as because polysaccharides are not soluble in water. They are not strictly soluble, but they imbibe the water content. So soil polysaccharides may be different from that of original plant polysaccharides, because there will be a change in plant polysaccharide. The conditions will be different, but in soil the conditions will be different. That's why there will be a mild difference will be there. So in general, and coming to the next, these compounds are also produced by the microorganisms. It has been suggested that polysaccharides in the soil are recommendations for the monomeric unit derived from the plant and animals of microbial polysaccharides. So this is the statement given by the Stevenson in 1994. What this person is saying, that even microorganisms also produce some compounds, this polysaccharides. It been suggested that polysaccharides in the soil are recommendations of monomeric units derived from the plants and microbial polysaccharide. This is proteins. So soil polysaccharides are subjected to decomposition by the microbial attack because they are still valuable source for the food and energy. Generally, polysaccharides are the major source for the food and energy. Even though it is very difficult to decompose, still the microbes will attack these compounds, and because of the valuable source of the food and energy. So in general, there is enzymatic attack on these carbohydrates. There will be enzymatic attack, transformation through glycol glycol transfer. There are two broad type of enzymes are there. So those are all endo and ecto enzymes will be there. So the endo enzymes affected the catalytic cleavage of the glycosidyl bond, whereas exoenzyme induce the cleavage of the terminal residues. All these are all biochemistry part. There are two types of enzymes are there, endo and ecto enzymes are there. So the endo enzymes affect the catalytic cleavage of the glycosidyl bonds, whereas the exo enzymes induce the cleavage of the terminal residues. The greater the different ultimately what is that, the greater the different types of linkage and greater the branching of the polysaccharide structure, the greater will be the resistance to the enzymatic degradation of soil polysaccharides. So if there is a high complexity, there is a more branching, more variation is there, means there will be a lot of resistance to the enzymatic reaction. So this resistance is perhaps why the compounds can accumulate in the soil, although the amount readily accounted for more than 20% in the soil. Although even though there is a 20%, so this resistance, perhaps the compounds, so this resistance is the reason why the accumulation in the cell, although amount rarely account for around 20% only. Even though it is 20%, the accumulation is very high because of this resistance only. Coming to the continuing the topic, the polysaccharides can also, which polysaccharide soil can protect against degradation of interaction of the soil constants such as clay and metal cations. See students, now we are coming very close to our topic. So, soil polysaccharides can also protect against degradation by interaction with soil constants such as clay and metallic ions. So, intimate association with the soil clays has been reported of a slow chemical degradation. Yeah, very important, because of they already they have a very polysaccharides have a strong resistance power to degradation. So, the intimate association with soil clays reported slow chemical degradation, whereas absorption of polysaccharides, especially by the expanding clays like Montmorillonite and Smithsite, in the intermicellar, that means interlayer spaces, render them inaccessible to the enzymatic and other microbial attack. Remember, students, see, we already we have that polysaccharides have one strong that strong already that polysaccharides have a strong resistance toward the degradation. But remember, student, this will help them. This to avoid this degradation. What will happen? They will associate with the clay and metallic cations. What will happen? The chemical degradation will be slowly reduced, and sometimes these polysaccharides may go in between the clay lattice. So evidence have also been present that complex reactions with metals. So these polysaccharides again they went up with the complex reactions may inhibit the enzymatic decomposition of the soil polysaccharides. So these polysaccharides, what will happen? Immediately they will form some bonding or something with this metallic cations. What will happen? This will also inhibit the enzymatic decomposition of the soil polysaccharides. So this ultimately. So now you think, students, what happening in our soil? These polysaccharides supply what kind of thing these polysaccharides are doing in our soil? Generally, they will form the reaction. They're forming chelating, you know, if I talk all those things, it will be a very long subject. It will form a complex reaction with the metal cations and may then ultimately it will inhibit the enzymatic decomposition of soil polysaccharides, as reported by the Martin and his co-workers in 1966. Let us continuing the topic, the effect of the carbohydrates on the soil properties. Now, students, just remember what I have said in my previous slide, that association of the clay and other metallic cations, etc. Now we will apply that knowledge in our soil properties. Carbohydrates influence the soil physical conditions. We will see it will influence the physical conditions, chemical conditions, carbon metabolism, biological activity, and complex reactions of metals. So these are the things these carbohydrates will usually inhibit. What are those? Soil physical conditions, chemical conditions, carbon metabolism, biological activity, and complex reactions. So from the standpoint of soil physical, mention has been made in literature that interaction of the soil polysaccharides with the soil particles encourages soil aggregation. See, students, with the consequent formation of granular and crumbly structure, as given by these two great scientists like Braver and Greenland and his co-workers in 1961 and 62. So see, students, these polysaccharides, especially in soil physics, mentioned that has been made in literature, many literature is given by the scientific literature, interaction of soil. It will encourage the soil aggregation. Which one? These polysaccharides will encourage the soil aggregation with the consequent formation of granular to the crumb structure. So this aggregation will improve and granular to crumb structure will be formed, and this will improve our physical properties. Now you should answer, students. Now I have given my explanation in last slide. Now you should answer the why, how this aggregation is happening with the help of polysaccharides. I said that these polysaccharides were giving a good encourages the soil aggregation, and ultimately it will end up with a granular and crumbly structure. Can you say how it is happening? Can anyone answer? Please answer. It should be a discussion. Can you answer why?
They are insoluble in nature.
Yeah, Varun is saying that insoluble. Okay, insoluble in nature. Insoluble in nature. That is one reason. Another one. I've said one important point in my previous slide. What is that? Please, another important point I have said. What is that? Can anyone answer?
High pH to N ratio, unable to decompose.
You're saying something about the chemical characteristics. I'm talking about the physical characteristics. Okay, let me explain, students. It is nothing but I have said that it will form a bonding with uh, with the expanding clay type of clays. These polysaccharides I have said in my previous slide. So what will happen ultimately? It will improve the what this bonding between the polysaccharides with in between the clays and particles. What will happen? It will all the two clay particles. Everything will be started aggregating and improve the soil structure. So that bonding improves the soil aggregation. So that is what we should apply our knowledge to it, not just simply listening. The class is not lucrative thing. Okay. Let's continuing the next slide. Braver, as is another scientist, indicated that that oxidative destruction of soil polysaccharide resulted in a 30 to 90% reduction in solubility of soil aggregates, stability of soil aggregates. See, students, Braver is saying that if we go for oxidative destruction of the soil polysaccharide, resulted in a 30 to 90% reduction in stability of the soil aggregates. If these polysaccharides plays a major role, students, if you go for oxidative destruction, what will happen? Almost 30 to 90% there will be a reduction in the soil aggregation. This is an important role in this carbohydrates. So this stability affects the soil structure, is attributed to the increasing in the to an attribute to an increasing cementing effect. So what will happen? It will affect the stability effect, and also it will affect the cementing effect of the particular soils also. Let's continuing. By interacting with the soil clays, the polysaccharides is though to change the properties of the clay and surfaces with respect to the adsorption. So generally, with respect, what will happen by interaction of soil clays with soil clay, the polysaccharide is though to change the soil properties of the clay surface with respect to the absorption of water. So with it also doing something with join with water also. The organic compounds compete with the water molecules. This is the important point line, students. See, focus this line. So the organic compound compete with water molecule for absorption site, and by replacing the adsorbed water, they reduce the wetting and swelling, thereby increasing the cementation. See, students, the organic compound, the so-called organic compounds, what they will do? Maybe mostly polysaccharides compete with the water molecules for the particular site. By replacing adsorbed water, they reducing wetting and swelling. That increasing that swelling and characters, the wetting and swelling characters will decreases. What will happen? The cementing, the cementing between the particles will be increases. So this will leads to some stability to the particular soil. This is the reason that I said na, that bonding. So the stabilization effect of soil aggregate by the fungal mycelia as frequently postulated by the number of authors. So even you can say, sir, what is then fungal also will fungal our beneficial fungals also is that will also that mycelia also will be yeah, it will also, some many authors also saying that one also is one of the character of stability of our soil aggregates. It's considered temporary effect by Brewer. So what this Brewer is saying that maybe yes, the fungal may give some stability, but it's very simple because mycelial cells die rapidly and undergo further microbial decomposition. What happening? The fungal mycelia will give some sort of stability to the structure, soil structure. But what will happen? In the meantime, what will happen? The mycelial cells also will go undergo for decomposition because their lifetime will be expired. And what will happen? There will be some microbial decomposition will be there. And also coming to them, chemically carbohydrates are especially polysaccharide affect the cation exchange reactions and complex formation with metal ions. Just we have discussed now 2 slides back, which are attributed to the functional groups such as hydroxyl, carboxyl, uh, yeah, carboxyl group in a uronic acids. So these carbohydrates, especially polysaccharide, affect the cation exchange reactions and complex formation with metal ions, which attributed how this happening because of that. They will have some functional group like hydroxyl functional group. What is carboxyl functional group? Functional group is a we'll discuss what is a function. If you ask me what is functional group, that's not fair. So you should know what is a functional group. So now let's continue this. They also exhibit some anion exchange capacity because of several carbohydrates may also contain amino group. Yeah, many amino sugars. Carbohydrates also contain amino acids. You will get detailed explanation coming slides. What is this? How the cation anion exchange will influence by this amino groups. So carbohydrates are important for the biological activity, microbial carbon metabolism in the cells because they are the main source for the food and energy for the microorganisms. Yes, because due to this, the carbohydrates are the major source for the food and microorganisms. So mineralization of amino sugars will enrich the soil with nitrogen compound need for the plant growth. Okay, the mineralization of amino sugars is enriched the soil with nitrogen compound needed for the plant growth. According to Stevenson, our great scientist came, some sugars may stimulate the root elongation and seed germination. Sucrose is known to serve as a carbon source for the asymbiotic propagation of orchids and from the seed in tissue culture labs. So this is an experimental result given by the TAN in 1994. The soil polysaccharides also serves as a building material for the synthesis of humic compound. So for soil polysaccharides as a building material for the humic compound. So Remember, each and line to line point is important, students. So just make some scientific assumptions. Let's continue the next slide. So they react with lignin. Which one? These carbohydrates, they react with lignin and amino acids and therefore contribute towards the formation of humic and the related compounds. However, carbohydrates are not still considered integral part of the humic molecular core because they're attached as a peripheral side chains. Though it is not considered, though this humic compounds and carbohydrates are not considered as a integral part of the humic molecule because it was attached as a peripheral side chain. So it will be the peripheral side chain compounds only. So pelvic acids are reported to be humopolysaccharide esters, as reported by these scientists Tan and Clark. So aside from the beneficial effect reported, there are harmful effects of soil pollutants have been recently surfaced in the literature. What is those harmful literature? So we up to now we have seen some benefit effects, but now we will see what is the harmful effect. The aqueous soil hydrophobicity in a Gulf grains is related to the formation of polysaccharides containing coating around this sand grains on the water absorbed by the organic matter. So what will happen? The acquired soil hydrophobicity. Hydrophobic hydrophobicity means soil was not that water was not attaching. That hydrophobic means opposite. Hydrophobicity. Acquired hydrophobicity in Gulf greens in Gulf, the sandy greens. What happening? Why this hydrophobicity was happening? Why this water was not attached in the soil means because of this polysaccharide coated around the sand grains. This is the reason why that problem was happening Gulf greens in Gulf countries, that Gulf countries. So the phenomena of this phenomenon is called waterproofing. So I think you are getting this point. So students, what is this hydrophobicity means? Think this is a think. I will draw like think this is the soil grain. Instead of water, you can see some polysaccharides are there inside. So what will happen? Water molecules won't come here. It shows some phobicity, soil hydrophobicity. There is no water attachment in the soil. This is one type of disadvantages. So this phenomena is called as waterproofing by Stevenson in 1990. Stevenson is also opinion that production of microbial mucilage and gums which are rich in polysaccharides may causes the clogging of pores, which consequent reduction in the soil permeability. So another disadvantage given by the Stevenson is if the due to the production of microbial mucilage and gums which are rich in polysaccharides may cause the clogging of the soil pores and consequently reduction in the soil permeability. This is another reason. So poorly drained soils with anaerobic conditions are especially prone to this effect. So if there is no so if there is no proper drainage, so already these mucilage are blocking the pores, so there the permeability reduce and with combated with the poor drainage condition means there will be prevailing of anaerobic conditions. So this is leads to the harmful, a more harmful effect. So these are the some sort of disadvantages of accumulation of carbohydrates. Now we will see regarding the amino acids. Regarding amino acids we will discuss it. So before going to amino acids, if you have any doubts regarding carbohydrates or what we have discussed about carbohydrates, you can ask now. These are another important compounds in our discussion. So today we're discussing about it. Amino acids are the fundamental structure units for the peptides and protein students. Very important. I'm mentioning the scientist name also, Hughes in 2009. Peptides and proteins. This is the fundamental structure. So remember this point, amino acids are the fundamental structural unit for the peptides and proteins. So nitrogen and amino acids occur as amino group. This nitrogen and amino acids. Remember students, there is an important concept on this, both this amino and this one. We'll see that. So the nitrogen in amino acids occur as amino group attached to the carbon chain. The acidic part consisting a terminal C link to the to the oxygen atom as OH group, often written as COOH. This is called the carboxylane group. This is the acidic compound. So the acidic part is a part of the terminal carbon linked to an oxygen atom and OH group. So there is the oxygen group is there, OH group is often written as COOH. That is called the carboxylane. Later it is called as carboxylane group exhibited acidic properties. So this carboxylane group will exhibit some, it will show some acidic properties because of presence of hydrogen and OH minus radicals can be dissociated. So there is a chance of dissociation of OH and O compound also. OH and O compound. So this particular carboxyl group has the characteristics of showing some acidic properties because it consisting of OH radical and oxygen radical. Sometimes H, sometimes it may release only H radical also. So dissociation. So there is a dissociation making, remember, that radical capable of reacting with bases also. So so this particular radical, this particular carboxyl group has a capacity to react with bases also. This is the one proper characteristic. So remember, student, this is a general formula for the of an amino acids. Remember, please note down this structure. So based on this structure only, we are going to discuss many things. So please note down the this is the general structure. This is the general structure of our amino acids. So in amino acids, what will happen is, for the very first, these are the fundamental structure for the peptides and uh, polysaccharides and amino groups attached to the carbon chain. The acidic part is consisting of carboxyl groups. The carboxyl group has a capacity both because of hydrogen and OH minus radicals can be dissociated, making remaining as the radical capable of react with bases also. It can be react with bases also. But let us continue this a bit. So because of the amino acids is one of the carbon adjusting to the carboxyl group, that is an alpha carbon, amino acids with general formula called alpha amino acids. So this amino group is on this amino group, that NH2 group. NH group is on carbon adjacent to the carboxyl group, very adjacent group, the alpha carbon. The amino acids in general formula is called as alpha amino acids. This is called the alpha amino acids. So the and another next thing is that these amino acids obtained by hydrolysis of protein and alpha amino acids can be classified into aliphatic, aromatic, and heterocyclic. You should learn how I think if you are very keen about in organic chemistry, you may listen to all these things: aliphatic, aromatic, and heterocyclic. So this is the structure of aliphatic, aromatic, and heterocyclic. The name is heterocyclic. Now we will see about these things. What is aromatic? What is heterocyclic? What is this that? We will see all this. So in addition to the division into the three groups, that's aromatic, three groups of amino acids from the protein, it is also distinguished into neutral amino acids, acidic amino acids, and basic amino acids. So they again that aliphatic, aromatic, and heterocyclic group, there are three divisions of amino acids. Again, these amino acids are again they distinguished from the protein as a neutral, acidic, and basic amino acids. So neutral amino acids are characterized of this is the structure, students. This is the structure for the neutral amino acids. One amino group and carboxyl group. This is present. So one COOH group will be there. So whereas an acidic type of group, and there is concept of two COOH group, and vice versa, one NH2 group. Where in acidic type, this is the structure. Whereas coming to the basic, it is more than, so more than one, there will be NH2 group. That amino group will be there. Here, see here, there is here one amino group, here one amino group versus one COOH group in their structure. There will be one COOH structure group. So this is called a neutral, acidic, and basic. This is the structure. So in neutral, you can see both. There will be one NH2 group, and another one is called COOH group. Whereas in acidic part, you can see two COOH because COOH contribute to our acidic part. So that's what consisting of two COOH and one NH. But in basic, you can see two amide group. So NH2 amide groups are there. This is regarding the amino acids, so neutral, acidic, and basic conditions. This is another division. Now we will see that neutral type of amino acids appear to be present in equal dominating amount in the soils of temperate and tropical regions. Remember this line. This neutral type of amino acids appear to be present equally in dominating amount in the soils of temperate and tropical regions. Temperate and tropical regions. However, conflicting information will presented and concern distribution of acidic, and so there is some conflicts is there. There are different opinions are there in scientific community. So there is a conflict there is some conflict regarding with this statement. A number of scientists reported that the concentration of basic amino acids higher than those of acidic amino acids in the soils of subtropic and tropical regions. So remember this line, students. So basic amino acids are higher than those of acidic amino acids in the soils of subtropic and tropic regions. On the other hand, many other scientists believe that acidic amino acids are prevalent types of found in tropical and subtropical. So these are different types of opinions, students, but keep on in general. Just remember that basic amino acids are high in subtropic and tropical regions. So there are the very difficult nature of the extraction procedure yielding to the poor recovery of the amino acids as presented by such this agrementation. So these type of amino acids are also important structural consistency of structural constant of the humic compounds. These amino acids are very important structural constant of the humic acid. So humic acids tend to be high in neutral and basic amino acids. Remember this line, students. Humic acid tend to be higher in neutral and basic amino acids, whereas pelvic acid contains more acidic type of amino acids. So in humic acid tend to be humic acid consisting of high neutral and basic amino acids. But in pelvic acid, you can see there is a more acidic type of amino acids will be there, as reported by Stevenson in 1994. Continuing to our amino acids, students, the proteins are complex combinations of amino acids under reflection of six. So these are extracting procedures. Six normal HCl after 18 to 24 hours, the protein may hydrolyze into the constants of amino acids. So 21 amino acids are usually found in protein constant by soils. Many other type of amino acids have been detected which do not belongs to the protein. So just for information, I quote these two lines. After distillation or after going for an identification, we have found many different type of amino acids. Okay, student, the protein is found by the linking of amino acid molecule through the amino or carboxylane group. So how this protein will be formed means this there will be linkage of amino acid group through the amino and carboxylane group, just like this. See, this is the dipeptide. This is the glycine amino acid. These are two glycines will be combined. And the combine, what will happen? It will form the dipeptide conditions. You can see dipeptide conditions we can be prevalent. This connection of chain will form. This is regarding. So when only a small or short polymer is produced, substance by convention, a peptide, there is a small substance. But when a lot of amino acids are linked together from a long or big polymer, is called the polypeptide, and it is called the protein. So if there is only very short polymer is there, means it is called the peptide. If there is a long chain of amino acids is there, means what will happen? It called a big polymer or polypeptide. However, the use of the terms peptide and protein remain inconsistent. So there is a lot of opinions of this peptide and polypeptides are very inconsistent. So insulin, you know what is insulin? A short polypeptide is classified as a protein, whereas amyloid beta peptide, the substance caused the Alzheimer's disease, a very long polypeptide is confusionally called as peptide. So there is a lot of difference of opinion. See what we have said here. Very small substance is called peptide. Very long linkage is called as a polypeptide. But whereas if you see insulin is a short polypeptide, it's very short, classified as protein. Just put it under protein. But if you go to the amyloid beta peptide, the substance actually this amyloid beta peptide is a reason for the reason of Alzheimer's disease. A very long and large polypeptide is confusionally called as peptide. Because the nitrogen content of the most of the protein is about 16%, and this element is easily analyzed as an amount by the Calzat procedure. We know what is usually we do in our laboratory. The protein content can be estimated by determining the N content and multiplying with 6.25. These analytical procedures. So let us continue the class. This is what this is what I'm interested to say. Colloidal chemistry of amino acids. This is very important, students. Why I have given that much background for the amino acids means because I have to say what is the importance of amino acids in the our soil conditions. The amino acids, with certain exceptions, are generally soluble in water. They are generally soluble in water, no doubt in it, and insoluble in non-polar organic solvents such as ether, chloroform, and acetone. So amino acids are not soluble in non-polar compounds. It can be soluble only in water. So amino acids contain both carboxylane and amino group, as we discussed in our previous slide. So these compounds will react with base and cat, basic and acids. Remember, due to the presence of carboxylane and amino group, these amino acids can react with both base substance and acid substance also. Such compounds is called amphoteric. This word is important. Very important. Very important. This amphoteric nature. If any substance has a capacity to react with both acid and base substance, that substance is called amphoteric substance, amphoteric compound, or amphoteric in nature. For example, alanine is dissolved in H2O. The pH is 7. If the electrodes are placed in the solution, a potential difference is placed across the electrode. The amino acid will not migrate into the electric field. I will say we will understand. You can get them answer. Alanine is a compound. If it dissolved in water, the pH is 7. If the electrode is placed in the solution, the potential difference placed across the electrode by passing the current, the amino acids will not migrate into the electric field, because whatever the amino acids are produced will not go to migrate to electric field, because so it's amphoteric in nature. It has a both capacitive acid and reaction. So it is an amino acid molecule is neutral. It has an amino acid molecule called, there is a neutral amino acid is there. That's why to understand this one simple concept, I have given that much long background of classification of amino acid, neutral, alkali, and acid type of amino acid. So this amphoteric nature. We will deal more very interesting thing about this amphoteric nature in coming slide. So, however, when an alkali is added to the solution, what will happen? Alanine become negatively charged and migrated to the positively cation. So, what will happen here? What happened? Alanine, what will happen? Dissolved in pH, the pH is 7. The electrodes are placed in the solution. What happened? The potential difference placed across the electrodes. The amino acids will not migrate because amino acids become very neutral because of the pH is 7. But if you see that if you add any alkaline or if you add any alkali solution to that to the compound, what will happen? Alanine become negatively charged and migrated to the positively anode. Similarly, when an acid added to the alanine compound, see, if we simply alanine was dissolved in the compound at the pH 7, nothing was happened. Everything is neutral. But if we added alkaline, what will happen? It turned into negatively charged compound, and thus those negatively charged amino acids were migrated to our positively anode. Similarly, when we add to the alanine compound, become positively charged and migrated to the negatively charged cathode. Understanding God, students? So this behavior explained by the considering alanine as a zwitterion. So this particular behavior of this particular alanine is called, this particular ion is called zwitterion, a name originally introduced by the Berzuman in 1922 for an amphoteric compounds carried both positive and negative charged particles. So any ion which carries both positive and negative charged charge is called zwitterion. That means it has both positive and negative charge. That is called the zwitterion. Double charge ion or dipolar ion is called as zwitterion. So you have learned two important concepts called what is the compound, amphoteric nature, and zwitterion. This is very important concept, students. Remember, whether it is whatever the category belongs to, whether JRF, SRF, just try to remember. We should know what is zwitterion. What is, so it is there here, zwitterion, and what is amphoteric in nature. So you should know all these things. Now we will continue our class. So the presence of equal amount of both positive and negative charged causes the molecule to behave a neutral can occur only at isoelectric point pH, often designed as pi. So if there is a both positive and negative charged amino acids are there, what will happen? It will behave like a neutral. That too, it occurs only at the isoelectric point of the pH, that is often designed as pi. It's called the pi. As noted above, at the pH or pi is equal to 7, the amino acid is protonated and causing it to be positively charged. So once the protonation, when the H plus was released, it is completely become a H plus. When alkali is added, the excess proton of the amino acids is neutralized, and this zwitterion is transformed into anion. Right? You're getting my point. So this explained the migration to the anion. The transformation reaction can be illustrated. See here it is happening. It's a zwitterion. So what will happen? If I'm added OH, what will happen? It will again turning into the H plus. It becoming an anion by releasing OH minus ions. Which here there is a hydrogen. H2O was released. So by adding something, OH minus is there. So what will happen? It releasing H2O, it becoming an anionic compound. This is called this protonation. Excess protonation is called anionic compound. The same time, when an acid was added to the dissociated carboxylane group, accept the proton. So here the carboxylane group was accepting, but here, students, the excess amount of alkali was accepted by this particular compound, so it became an anion. But here, if we add when an acid was added to dissociated carboxylane accepted proton, the zwitterion is converted into cation that matches to the cathode. So that's just to the cathode. So when we added an acid, what will happen? what will happen again? It will converted it with the excess protonation will be migrated and it will become positively charged. Sorry, yeah, to charge and become a cathode. This transformation process is illustrated in the following reaction. This reactions. So what you can see this is a compound. This is Zwitter ion. We added a H plus ions. What will happen? CO3. This hydrogen will come and attach it to here. The positive charge is remain. It's called the cation. This is called this transformation. This transformation is this behavior of both negative and positive way is called the Zwitterion. This character is called the Zwitterionic character. Now we will see next. That at the pH of 2 point, the carboxyl group is half protonated, almost half protonated. If then followed an acid was added, most of the amino acids will present as a positively charged compound and will be attracted by the clay and organic compound. See, student, this is the importance for our agriculture point of view. So if you added more and more acids, what will happen? Almost all the protonation will be taking place, all H plus ions will be all everything was released, and amino acids will become positively charged. And what will happen? This positively charged amino acids will go and will attach it to the clay particles or organic clay particles. On the other hand, in the basic soils, this condition is prevailing only in the pH condition where acidic condition is prevailing. But in acid, in on the other hand, in basic soils, the amino acids will behave as anions and hence undergoes reaction with metal cations and other organic compounds. In basic cations, what will happen? The amino acid behave as an anions and hence undergoes to the reaction with metals and other organic compounds. Anions is another anions and negatively charged particles. So these reaction with the clay and metals contribute toward the accumulation of amino acids in the soil. So similar reaction can also occur different types of amino acids on the other soil colloids also. So the basic amino acids with more than one positively charged amino group interacted more readily with negatively charged soil inorganic and organic colloids, example clay and reduced sugars, than due to the neutral amino acids. So overall, students, in basic amino acids, what will happen means with the more than one positively charged, what will happen? The amino group will interact with more readily with negatively charged soil inorganic and organic compounds. So here this is an important concept, students. So actually this is a source of nitrogen also, the presence of this amino group. So this nature, this so-called neutral and alkaline nature, this vitrionic nature, this amphoteric nature will contribute to the accumulation of amino acids in our soils. So in contrast, acid and amino acids more than one negatively charged carboxyl group will then be very active in complex reactions with metal ions and positively charged organic colloids than the neutral and basic amino acids. I hope you're getting my points. Okay, I am reading very one because each and every line I have taken very serious interest. That's why I'm taking class like this. So in contrast with acid amino acids, what will happen? More than one negatively charged carboxyl group will then be very active in complex reaction with the metal ions and positively charged organic colloids and then neutral charged colloids. So mostly this type of reactions, what will happen? Oxysols and altisols in the tropic and subtropical regions are known to be very acidic soils. Hence, their amino acids are most likely to be positively charged and will undergo interaction with the negatively charged clays and organics only. This is very important concept. So in oxysols, what will happen means in tropical and subtropical regions are known to be acid soils. Hence, their amino acids are most likely to be positively charged and will undergo interaction with negatively charged clays and other organic soils. Of the three types of amino acids, the basic types, which are more than one positively charged amino acids indicated above, will be more effective. The three amino acids, whatever said, the basic types with the more than one positively charged amino acid will be more effective. So these soils are also characterized by the high content of aluminium, iron, manganese by the clay fractions and dominated by the gypsite and geotite. However, because of their positively charged, neither one of these metals or clay minerals is expected to be react extensively with basic or acidic or neutral amino acids unless the soils are limited with high pH values. So this so-called negative and positive charges interactions will plays a major role in our soil components. Now we will see that. On the other hand, if you come to the mollisols and aridisols, the temperate regions are more neutrally to slightly basic in nature. In reaction, they contain high amount of calcium and sodium. So their clay fraction usually high amount of negatively charged 2:1 clay minerals. Here, what will happen? In these conditions, what will happen? The three types of amino acids will be negatively charged and therefore will not be able to interact with the clays by will but will react with calcium. So naturally, what will happen? So the negatively charged amino acids will not react with the clay in this particular soil orders, but they come and interact with the calcium ions. However, in these soils, the acidic amino acids with more than one negatively charged carboxylic group will more effectively interact with calcium and sodium ions than the basic and neutral ions. So in these conditions where but there's a negative charges there in acid, if there is amino acids are there, so the more than one negatively charged carboxyl will be more effective to react with calcium and amino acids. So these are the author's opinions. So all these things are author's opinion. These are all the scientific opinions for the reason of high content of basic amino acids in tropical and subtropical regions of the postulated by the Stevenson. So in these soils, the basic amino acids are accumulated because of the interaction with clay. So all these basic and interaction applications will be there. So the chemical principles discussed above profited the accumulation of acidic amino acids in the soils of the tropics and scientifically cannot be confirmed by the data summarized by Suda. So as per the theory, what we are discussing means acid amino acids are accumulation in the tropics, but there's no scientific confirmation. Instead of chemical conditions created by the Zwitterian reactions that are conductive for accumulation of acid amino acids are only in mollisols and aridosols of the temperate regions. The precipitation after their reaction with calcium ions only. So this is regarding with amino acids. Amino acids, very interesting thing we have to learn about. So overall in amino acids, we have to remember this amphoteric nature and this classification, this glycine, how this long chains are formed, and this neutral, acidic, and basic. This will be form our basic idea, students. If you know all these things, we can remember all these points. So another important compound called lipids. We will discuss with lipids, and again we will go with lignin, and after that there is a discussion of humus fractions. With that we will end up our session today. So before going to the next session, please, if you have any doubts, you can ask. Heterogeneous compounds of the fatty acids and wax and oils is important. Lipids are nothing but heterogeneous compounds of fatty acids and waxes and oils. The term lipids does not imply particular chemical structure as with amino acids. So lipids are no imphile any, they didn't have any particular imphiles. The name usually describes the substance that is solid that are soluble in fat solvents such as ether and chloroform and benzene. So these lipids are mostly soluble in ether, chloroform, or benzene. So lipids are usually classified as three types. That's called simple lipids, compound lipids, and derived lipids. So this includes the neutral lipids, that's fats, oils, and waxes, and compound lipids called phosphatides, glycolipids, sulfolipids, terpenoid lipids, including carotenoids, belong to this group. So derived lipids are the lipid derived from the hydrolysis of simple and compound lipids. So this is nothing but these derived lipids are completely derived from the above two simple and compounds. This includes mostly fatty acids, alcohols, sterols, and cholesterols. Comes under the derived lipids. So these are the classification of lipids: simple lipids, compound lipids, and derived lipids. Now we will see. So I'm not going to go into historical background of the lipids because lipids are very complex, very complex to study, which is not up to the nature of this class. We'll continue the colloidal chemistry. Accumulation of lipids vary from soil to soil, with the highest concentration observed in the humus fraction, mostly in spodosols, and lowest in mollusols. Simply, students, accumulation of lipids are very high in spodosols, low in mollusols. As in case with amino acids, some of these soil lipids find in origin of from the higher plants, but may also have derived from the microbial tissue also. So bacterial cell consisting around the 5 to 10% of the lipids, whereas fungal consisting of the 10 to 25% only. So lignin, students, lignin, there is actually primary lignin consisting of the second, considered the second highest. It's the second to the cellulose and most abundance is biopolymer in nature. It is the most biopolymer. This lignin is the most biopolymer. It is a system of it is a system of thermoplastic, highly aromatic compound. You know what is aromatic compound? Aromatic aliphatic. So derived from the coniferous alcohol or glycine propane monomers given by these two great men. So anyhow, plant lignins can be divided into three types. What are those? Lignin from the softwood, lignin from the hardwood, and lignin from the grasses. All these three are quite similar, students. The only difference is that you can see the placement of one compound. What is that difference? So this is called a softwood. This is called the softwood content. This is the lignin present in softwood or hardwood. Yeah, this is the softwood content. The monomer of the softwood lignin possessing of methoxyl group is known as under the name of called coniferal alcohol because of the dominant presence of coniferous. So it's the most why it is called coniferal alcohol is mostly this type of monomer or this type of lignin is present in here. Here the methoxyl group, see this methoxyl group is known as under the coniferal alcohol. The polymer of the presence of this methoxyl here, this compound in benzene structure. The polymerization of a coniferal alcohol forms the glycine polymer. Hence, the several authors tend to name it as a, also called glycine lignin instead of coniferal lignin. So there is a lot of difference opinion between is there. So mostly once we go for polymerization, it will gives the glycine polymer also. So this methox is presented as a CHO group. See this is the IUPAC name 4 hydroxy 3 methoxy phenyl propane. So 4 hydroxy 4 hydroxy there is a one fourth carbon there is a hydroxyl group is there. So 3 methoxy third carbon there is a methoxyl group is there. It's called phenyl propane. We will discuss more about this classification and naming of this IUPAC in coming classes. The hardwood of the lignin monomer is characterized by the 2-methoxyl group in its molecule is called sniffyl alcohol. So in hardwood you can see two compound, 2-methoxyl group. In softwood you can see only 1-methoxy group, but in hardwood you can see 2-methoxy group. Coming to another one, grass. This is grass or bamboo lignin is composed of the grass monomer monocotyledonous and grass lignin consisting of the or derived predominantly methoxyl group as a free basic unit or basic organic chemistry called chloromyl alcohol. So here there is no methoxyl group will be present in this type of lignin compound. So these are the main three types of lignin lipids we have seen so called. What is the colloidal chemistry? What is the colloidal importance of the lignins in the cell? So bulk of the lignin occur in the secondary cell walls where it is associated with the cellulose and hemicellulose in the stem. Generally, all these lignin compound are accumulated or are associated with cellulose and hemicellulose only. The quantity of lignin increases with the plant age and stem content. The quantity of lignin is lignin increases in plant age and stem content. As the age increases, lignin content also will be increased. So it is very important constant of the woody tissue because we have discussed all those things about the wood tissues containing major portion of the methoxyl content of the wood. A large amount of lignin is also detected in the vesicular bundles of the plant tissue. Yeah, perhaps the strengthening makes the xylem and more water resistance. By virtue of the presence of large amount of vesicular bundles, the lignin content of the tropical grass is considerably larger than that of temperate grasses. So generally, due to the presence of this vesicular bundle, the lignin content in tropical grass is considerably higher the regions than the temperate regions. Now we will see. Consequently, what happened? The soil under the tropical grass are expected to have a high lignin content. So we have discussed where the lignin content is present. But if we go with the consequently, what will happen under the tropical grass expected to have a high lignin content than the soil under the temperate regions. So lignin content where it will be high in tropical grass conditions, only you can see more lignin. So this difference may also influence on the nature of the humic matter form. This lignin content. So this type of nature of climatic or habitat conditions may also influence the humic matter formation. So lignin is an insoluble in water and more organic solvent, especially in a strong sulfuric acid. It's insoluble in water, but soluble in some compounds like sulfuric acid. It has a characteristics of UV absorption spectrum and give characteristics of color reaction upon the staining with phenols and aromatics. So these are all the biochemical analysis. It hydrolyzes into simple compounds and do complexes with carbohydrates and proteins. So generally, if you go for high hydrolyzation, it forms some complexes with carbohydrates and proteins. The high resistance of the lignin in microbial decomposition is perhaps the reason why the accumulation is very high. Lignin content due to this lignin is very high, very difficult to decompose. That's why the accumulation is very high. It is believed that depending upon the condition, this could be result in the formation of peat with the which in time can be converted into lignite, coal, and ultimately oil and fossil deposits. So due to this high resistance nature, what will happening? Uh, The soil is sometimes may become as a peat, which in time converted into lignin coal, and ultimately it becomes the oil. Nevertheless, lignin can be attacked with special microorganisms. So there are some special microorganisms will be there, so we can attack the lignin with those particular microorganisms. So this is regarding the lignin. Students, lignin is very difficult, mostly due to the accumulation of this heavy lignin in the soils. What will happen means the peat soils and muck soils, all this formation due to the muck nature, peat nature, what will happen? Slowly it will be converted into lignite, or sometimes the coal. Ultimately leads to some fossil fuel depositions also. It's the fossil deposit fuels also. And there are some special microbes are there to decompose this lignin. So this is regarding the lignin. Finally, as I said, we won't discuss much about the humic compound, but because already we have discussed about the humus in the previous lecture called soil organic matter. But instead today we just I will touch the thing, what is humus and what are the fractions. So this is a part. This is organic compound, organic matter. We know how this organic matter was produced with alkaline. If you go with the alkaline distillation, what will happen? You can see two compounds will be there. The humic substance, which is soluble, and huminin, which is not soluble, non-humic matter, which is this is humic matter, this humus. There are two types of in humus. There are two type of compounds will be there. One is called the humic substance, another one is called humin or non-humic matter, which is insoluble but it is soluble. If you go for an acid, pelvic acid is not soluble in acid, but humic acid is highly soluble. And if you go for adjust to the pH, what will happen? This pelvic acid is divided into pelvic acid and beta humo, which is insoluble. Again, if you go with alcohol, if you dissolve this humic acid in alcohol, what will happen? Again, it will convert into humic acid insoluble, and hematomellanic acid is soluble. If we go with neutral salts, again it will convert into bromic acid, which is soluble, and gray humic acid, which is insoluble. So this is we usually see in many regular textbooks. We can see this type of fractionation of humus, which is soluble or not soluble. That's the only thing we have to remember, which one is soluble in which component, which one is not soluble in which component. This is regarding with the humus substance. So I hope today's lecture is somewhat, yeah, it is very lengthy. But remember, students, we have to learn what is organic from organic colloids. I think, in examination point of view, they will ask what is amphoteric nature, what is a Zwitter ion, and which kind of soils the accumulation of amino acids will be more. And if you just I said now, if you add more acid in amino acids, what will happen? What kind of reactions will be taking place? It convert into anion, or sometimes the anion will convert to cation, that is Zwitter ions. And carbohydrates, what is the role of carbohydrates, and what is the lignin? If the lignin accumulation is more, what will happen to the soil? So all these things. And regarding the humus, as usual, we know which one is soluble and which one is not soluble. With this, I'm ending the class. Thank you very much.